Against it. I think it is, but didn't know we'd have it, so we didn't do anything cute. I can draw Goofy, like the Disney, yeah, the Disney character Goofy, but that's almost it. That's almost the only thing I can draw. Do you feel my chin is touching it, so I don't feel like I could eat it more than this, but if I should raise it higher, I can. Beautiful. Thank you.
Shall we move the table out a touch?
Is this one also on? Nice.
Hey, can I use that? Then I don't have to. Yeah, testing.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do a demo.
Yes.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. All right, testing. Welcome, everybody. My name is Lisa McCrory. I'm one of the organizers for today's gathering. So I want to welcome everybody for our final installment of our summer education series. Today's topic is restorative justice, court diversion. And I wanted to first off let everybody know that there's lots of very healthy, nutritious food on the table over there. Bathrooms, there's bathrooms out the hall to the left and some downstairs. This series of educational events have been co-sponsored by the Bethel Town Meeting and Community Engagement Committee, as well as the Bethel Equity and Inclusion Committee. And I just want to recognize those committee members that are out here in the audience. Would you guys all raise your hands? Yay. And in the back. So for this final summer session, we're going to be joined by Misha. Is that Mish? Mish Altman, Court Diversion Case Manager of the Franklin Grand Isle Restorative Justice Center, and Lisa Lee, Victim Services and Community Outreach Coordinator at the Orange County Restorative Justice Center. And I'm going to let these wonderful people tell you more about who they are and what they do. And we'll get the ball rolling. Does that sound good? And it works.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having us tonight. We really appreciate you coming out on this beautiful Tuesday. And everyone who was a part of the Bethel Neighborhood Conversations series on crime and safety. We're really grateful to be able to be here today. My name is Mish. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the court diversion case manager at the Franklin Grand Isle Restorative Justice Center. And I also used to live here in Bethel and in South Royalton while I was studying down at the law school. So it's nice to be back.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lisa. I use she, her pronouns. I work at the Orange County Restorative Justice Center. I've been working there for 3 years. I work with harmed parties, which is what we call victims, through our restorative justice programs. I also do community outreach, and just so delighted that you chose to spend your time with us tonight talking about restorative justice.
So because this is such an engaged group of people, we want to start you with an icebreaker, which is something that we in restorative justice love. And so we hope you enjoy it somewhat. So this is just a little game. It's called This or That. I'm going to say two different things, and if you prefer the first one, you'll put up your fingers in a peace sign. Can I see that you enjoy that enough to do it? Perfect. And if you enjoy the second one, you're going to do a little rock on sign. Amazing. Okay, thank you. So we're going to do this one or two other times throughout this process, just to give us a little break from us talking a lot. So the first one, again, number one is peace sign, number two is rock on. So ice cream or cake? Nice. Books or movies? Excellent. Early bird or night owl? Neither. Just, I love this. Thank you. What's a good third option? Just neither. Flat, just flat. I love it. Middle of the day. All right, so that's sort of like just basic. And then to get a little bit deeper, when talking about taking responsibility, do you own up to it proactively or wait till you've been caught? Whatever happens first. Amazing. Thank you. Amazing. So I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to talk about our next little section.
Great. So first of all, just want to say how impressed we are with the whole neighborhood conversations on crime and safety that you all have been a part of. It's such an inspirational effort. There's a lot of time and energy that's gone into it by so many of you, people that are in this room, people that aren't in this room. So just want to really appreciate that and recognize what an important effort that is, partially because community responses to safety is at the heart of restorative justice. And so we really want to support healthy, productive community responses to really complex issues like safety as best we can and as many ways as we can. And so to honor all the work that everyone has done around having these discussions, looking for sustainable long-term solutions to these really complex issues, we really want what we present tonight to sort of answer some of the questions that were raised in the summary that we read in preparation for tonight's presentation. Answer some of those questions and talk about how restorative justice addresses some of those issues. So our goals tonight are to give a brief introduction to restorative justice, sort of theoretically, but also in practice in the state of Vermont, to talk about how the restorative justice centers in Vermont function within the collection of agencies that are devoted to public safety in your community. And also how the restorative justice centers can really be a resource for you as individuals and also in your community efforts towards increasing safety. So that's really what we're trying to do today. And so in a couple seconds, Misha's going to kick it off, but I just want to say a couple of things. One, if you have questions, we're going to have some time for questions and answers at the end. So please hold on to your questions for now. And then secondly, if for whatever reason we start talking real fast, there's a hand gesture that you can do to let us know what that is. And I'm going to show you that right now. All right, so please do that sort of lengthening sign so we know to slow down our words, because we really want to make sure that you can understand what we're talking about, that the people that watch the video can understand what we're talking about. Yeah, and because we do have a lot to say, but we want you to be able to hear it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So starting off just in terms of what is restorative justice? And a question sometimes is that many of us were taught that justice means punishment. And restorative justice asks the question, what if justice means healing? So that's the theory. It's a broad community-based approach to creating and maintaining healthy relationships. It's a set of practices, a philosophy, and a movement that centers people over systems, especially in relation to harm, how to address it, and how to meet the needs of people. So restorative justice practices originated in indigenous communities around the world. They were used to build community, deepen relationships, address conflict, and harm within the community before the invention of constructs like the police, the criminal legal system, and prisons. So before these systems existed, communities understood that they needed to address harm and build relationships, heal injured community members as best as possible without these punitive systems. So today we have a wide variety of both informal restorative practices that proactively build community and address needs, as well as more formal practices that respond to harm. And so this is just a little chart that kind of explains that those informal systems are used on a daily basis, whereas the more formal systems are responsive and require a little bit more training and are used a little more rarely. So just the briefest history, restorative practices are derived from many indigenous cultures, like I said, worldwide, from the Americas, Africa, New Zealand, Tibetan Buddhist, Celtic cultures. And we acknowledge that these practices have been co-opted in many ways from these indigenous cultures and reshaped to address our current, more European-centric society. So some key restorative principles that are known across are interconnectedness, the idea that all things in the universe are part of a single whole, that there is no single truth. Each person's experience is subjective. Your experience of an event is going to be different from every other person's experience of that same event. And that there's a societal role in both preventing and responding to harm. So we recognize that when harm occurs, there are societal factors that led up to that harm, as well as societal responsibility to acknowledge and respond to that harm. Today, restorative practices are commonly found in the U.S. educational system, but Vermont is unique in that every county here has a restorative justice center that is funded by state agencies. And we are able to offer restorative justice as a sort of a offshoot of the criminal legal system here in Vermont. I will say restorative justice is ideal for the kind of tight-knit communities that are found here because we all know our neighbors. And so that the idea of community building, which you have already done through these conversations, is at the heart of a lot of communities here in Vermont, excuse me. So this chart that I'm pulling up shows the difference between the criminal legal system and restorative justice. This is pulled from Howard Zehr's book, The Little Book of Restorative Justice, which we do have up at the front for donation if you'd like to take a copy home with you. So as opposed to the traditional legal system, which asks what law was broken, who broke it, and how should they be punished, restorative justice seeks to answer who was hurt, what are their needs, and whose obligation is it to meet those needs. It is a process that prioritizes collaboration as opposed to punishment. We recognize that we try to engage all stakeholders, recognizing that there's or some responsible parties, affected or harmed parties, and community members also serve as stakeholders within this. And this kind of shows some of those different pieces of where does the responsibility lie and who is here to help address these needs and who has needs. The primary goals are, again, to acknowledge the impact of the harm, address the needs of those affected, and find meaningful ways to restore harm caused as best as it can be. This approach emphasizes accountability, the active participation of the greater community in creating a safer, more just environment for everyone involved. So each agency within the state does function a little bit differently, and to best serve the local communities. That, again, is one of the nice things about it. Every community is a little bit different, and so the response is tailored to meet those communities' needs as well as the services that are available. There are several different methods to best meet the needs of an affected or harmed party, a responsible party, and the community. But one key similarity in Vermont programs is that we engage community members as volunteers to represent the community as a whole and help work with responsible and harmed parties to repair that harm in meaningful ways. So this is a chart. I'm sorry if the sun, this gorgeous light, is affecting your ability to see the screen. It's affecting my ability to see you. But I'm hoping that we are able to make it work. Can you see this okay still? Give or take. Okay, well, I'll run down. These are the general programs in Vermont through the state-funded agencies. So the first is pre-adjudication. So these programs are funded by the Attorney General's office in Vermont, and this means that somebody has been charged with a crime, and the state's attorney, the prosecutor, has referred this case to one of these programs. So there's court diversion, which responds to, I would say, most anything that is not related to mental health or substance use. If the charge does not relate to mental health or substance use, if it does, then those cases would go to the Tamarack program. The pretrial services provide screenings to determine needs of the person charged with the crime. So if it's unclear if there are concerns about mental health or substance use, then the pretrial services is a way to screen for those needs and connect people with resources. Tamarack is designed to address the charges that specifically relate to substance misuse and mental health concerns. And the primary focus of that program is on getting treatment for mental health or substance misuse. Once those needs have been met, working to repair the harm to the harmed party or the community. So there's also folks who are charged with driving with a suspended license. There's a specific program that is available to help people get their license reinstated. That's an easy way to stop people from getting those charges. And then there's pre-charge, which is in development right now. I'm not sure that it's been rolled out in any of the community justice centers yet, but it is going to be an opportunity for cases to be sent before there is a charge. So the law enforcement or state's attorneys can send cases to be addressed before there's involvement in the criminal legal system. So then if somebody has not been eligible for these pre-adjudication processes, they go through the court process, they are convicted of the charge. There are several options here. So we have reparative panels. And these are funded by the Department of Corrections. So anyone who has been engaged in probation or parole or is or has been formerly incarcerated would be eligible for these programs. These are reparative panels, circles of support and accountability, which we call COSA. And reentry services for formerly incarcerated individuals. We do transitional housing, assistance with getting permanent housing, assistance acquiring Social Security and/or employment. And I'll talk about sort of how the processes work in a minute. Finally, there's youth services. So recognizing that young people have additional needs. We have a balanced and restorative justice program called BARGE, and that is for folks under the age of 22. They can be referred this is funded by DCF. They can be referred by the Department of Children and Families. They can also be referred by the state's attorney if there is a charge, and by schools as well. And then we also have YSASP, which is the Youth Substance Awareness Safety Program. And that's for youth ages 16 to 20 who are given drinking charge or a marijuana charge before they are of legal age. And these also, there's ability to provide screenings as well as connect people with services. All of the programs are individualized to meet the needs of the involved parties in the community. And again, no two processes look the same, but they often share the same structure. And I'm going to kind of go through piece by piece how it works. So an event leads to a criminal charge. There's an arrest from law enforcement, and the state's attorney receives the affidavit and sends a referral. This can be before or after the legal process, and that would determine if they go to the pre-adjudication attorney general's agency funded programs or the DOC funded programs. The responsible party agrees to take accountability and participate in the program. They sign a referral. Then they do an intake with a case manager. At that meeting, again, the participant does need to take accountability and agree to engage in creating a repair agreement. They share their experience of the event, including the charge, any unmet needs that they have, and sort of simultaneously, the harmed party coordinator would reach out to those harmed for their experience and their needs. There is an initial meeting with the participant and either volunteers and or the harmed party with the support of the harmed party coordinator. And there can also be other support people for any of these folks as well. Participants can bring support folks. Harmed parties can bring in supportive people as well to share more about how that experience has affected them. The repair agreement is usually created at this meeting, and the agreement should address harmed party needs. Then there's a schedule for how long you think the person might think it would take to complete the items to, again, repair that harm. And the participant returns with the completed agreement items for volunteer approval, as well as making sure that the harmed party's needs have been met. If edits need to be made, for example, if there's an apology letter that doesn't quite nail the apology part, then there's a new deadline set to make some changes. We provide guidelines on what a meaningful apology letter might include. If the items are completed satisfactorily, the case is closed successfully. And this is all for participants who take accountability. If somebody is unable to take accountability and complete the process, the case goes back to the state's attorney. I mentioned that would be true if you didn't do the thing you were charged for. You couldn't take accountability for it. But some people also find that it's really difficult to face what you have done and the harm that you've caused. And so some people aren't in a space to be able to complete the program. But we do our best to make sure that we get people to that point and address some of that empathy piece. So at my office, we have a template for what the repair agreement looks like. And I'm realizing it's small on this little screen, but we want to ensure the impact of the event is understood, acknowledge harm caused, ensure it's less likely to occur, make amends, and create a positive connection with the community. And items are set for each of those different requirements of the program. Then we all sign it. The person comes back, they've done it, congratulations. The accountability, those 5 pieces are related to what accountability means in a restorative justice lens. And so again, acknowledging that harm was caused through your actions or behavior, what the impact was of those actions, making that plan so it doesn't happen again, taking steps to repair the harm to those who were hurt, and giving back to the community. So that's why those are the pieces of that repair agreement. I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to talk about harm party work.
Cool. So before I get into that, we're going to do another little bit of a game. So we're going to do that peace sign, rock on sign, just to shake things up a little bit. So, okay, option 1, text, peace sign, or call, rock on. Look at all those texters and callers. Great. How about totally allowed. Totally allowed. Some thumbs down. Neither text nor call. Um, so apologizing to someone, is it difficult? Peace sign? Not hard at all. Rock on. Nice. Thanks for indulging us. So yeah, I'm gonna be in the sun and talk about some of the issues that came up in your conversations around safety in this community. And so we decided to focus on two issues in particular: dangerous driving, which is a real issue, and substance use, crime related to substance use. So what I'm going to do for the next half hour, 40 minutes with Mish is talk about some of the approaches that we take to dangerous driving and substance use, talk about some of the programs that we have for addressing those, and share some case stories related to those kinds of issues. So, you know, Mish talked about all these different agencies that give us cases at our restorative justice centers, and probably all of those programs involve dangerous driving charges. So distracted driving or excessive speeding or driving under the influence. We get these kinds of cases all the time, and at varying degrees of severity and harm that's done. And so it's totally makes sense to me that we get so many dangerous driving cases because it's extremely visible in the community, right? Like it's hard to ignore someone speeding past your house repeatedly. And it is dangerous. Vehicles can cause tremendous harm to people, to bodies, and to property. So we get a lot of these cases and they're really important. But I'm going to zoom out for a second. And all these agencies, and I'm going to stand up because the sun is driving me crazy. So all these different agencies refer these cases to us, and the focus is on the drivers themselves, right? The people doing the dangerous driving. The people that are charged, convicted, sentenced, whatever. So all this focus is happening on the drivers. What about the people who get hurt by those drivers? What kind of attention do those people get by these agencies, by the Department of Corrections, by the courts? Well, the answer is not very much attention at all. So the justice that is focused on in the criminal legal system is all around those drivers, the people that do the harm, the responsible parties, as we say in restorative justice, and on sentencing them, convicting them, punishing them, giving them fines, sending them to prison, having them have criminal records, all of that, all of those agencies are focused on that. And so what actually do the harmed parties get out of the criminal legal system? The answer is not much at all because, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Yeah, doesn't get much attention. Harmed parties don't get much attention, and the attention they do get can be a double-edged sword. So because of mass media depictions of how the criminal legal system works, people think that they're going to have their day in court, that there's going to be a conviction for the wrongdoer, and they're going to go to prison. Well, in the state of Vermont, that does not happen very much at all. Most cases don't go to trial, so you don't get your day in court. And very, very few people are sentenced to prison. And so it's such a very rare outcome. And the vast majority of harmed parties are not satisfied with their experience with the criminal legal system, even if the outcome works in their favor and the person that did the harm is convicted or sentenced or whatever. And so, maybe they get a little bit of what they want, but maybe, and often, they experience trauma or re-traumatization through the criminal legal process, one which takes away their voice and choice, and at the end of the day, leaves them with very little to show for it, right? So this means that these needs that exist in these people that were harmed just stay there. The hurt that they experience, their loss of a sense of safety, property damage, injury, or worse, they're left to kind of pick up the pieces themselves and figure it out, largely on their own. And this is actually one of the places where restorative justice really shines in comparison to the criminal legal system, is the attention that is given to the people that are harmed by crime. Because as Mish was talking about, there's a process that involves all parties that were part of the original situation. And there's a special emphasis given to recognizing and validating the experience of the harmed party and getting their needs met, like whatever those things may be, as to the best of our ability, of anyone's ability. So harmed parties really are invited every time to participate in the restorative process in a way that makes sense to them and in a way that fits into their life. So that could look like, because these are the folks that I work with at the Orange County Restorative Justice Center. This could look like them telling me about their experience of harm. What happened? What was what were the consequences of this harmful action? So that is one way to participate. Maybe they just have a phone call with me and that's it. That's all they want to do. Or maybe they decide they want to have a face-to-face meeting with the person that actually did the harm, facilitated by our staff. It's totally up to their choice. Their participation is completely voluntary, and they can opt out at any time. And furthermore, in restorative justice, there are no victimless crimes. So for example, driving under the influence, a DUI. If somebody is driving under the influence and gets caught by law enforcement, but there's no crash, there's no injuries, there's no property damage, there's not really considered to be a victim. Well, in the restorative justice lens, the community is impacted. Even if there's not a directly impacted person, there are ripple effects, harmful ripple effects of a person driving under the influence in their community. And, this document talks all about all kinds of ripple effects that people in this community have experienced from things like dangerous driving when they themselves weren't directly impacted by property damage or injury or anything like that. So that's something that you yourselves, folks in this community, are aware of. And so in a restorative justice process, the voice of the community is always part of the process, at a bare minimum, by our volunteer community members that are part of our process. Okay, so maybe you're saying to yourself, Lisa, that sounds really nice, but we all know that restorative justice is nothing but a slap on the wrist. It's not actual justice. And a lot of the harmed parties that I speak to are very angry that their cases have been referred to restorative justice. So you're not alone. You're not alone in thinking that. So here's what I do. First of all, I validate their anger because most likely they had no choice in their case coming to diversion. So they've already been harmed by the criminal legal system, taking away their choice. And so they are justifiably angry. Secondly, they didn't choose to be a victim of a crime. So they also had their choice taken away that way. And maybe no one's even listened to them up to that point. So I totally validate their anger and understand where it comes from. Once we get past that, I try to have a conversation about what they think they could gain from going through the traditional court process. What would it do for them? Most people who haven't been involved in the criminal legal system themselves do not know how the criminal legal system works. And all of their information is based on Law and Order, the TV show. That is not how the criminal legal system works. So I pop their Law and Order bubbles. And with the harsh realities that, many cases are dismissed, most cases don't go to trial, very few people are incarcerated. If they want incarceration, I try to understand why they want someone incarcerated. Is it a need for safety? If it's a need for safety, then can we have a conversation about how our program can potentially meet their needs for safety? If it's a desire for retribution, if they want the person that hurt them to hurt just as badly, if not worse, than they hurt, well, that's not something that we do at the Restorative Justice Center. But we can support them in having the person that hurt them understand exactly how bad they were hurt. And we can also validate their pain. If they want the person, the responsible party, to face consequences, that's something we can do. They can make requests through our restorative justice programs for meaningful consequences. Consequences don't always mean punishment. Consequences in a restorative justice context are not punishments. So a harmed party can ask for restitution, to get repaid for the property that was taken from them or the losses that they had. They can ask for the person to do some kind of community service, a contribution to the community that makes sense to them. They could ask the responsible party to come to their property and clean up the barn that they crashed into. So consequences are something we can do. Now, there's one more thing that I'll tell you that I don't usually get a chance to tell harmed parties. And this is because it's not my job to try to convince someone that they should like or agree with restorative justice. So I'm not trying to convince harmed parties to agree with me. I'm trying to meet their needs. But many responsible parties actually find going through a restorative justice process more difficult than going through the traditional court system. It's because they have to take responsibility for what they did in front of people. They have to talk about what they did. They have to talk about why they did it. They have to talk about how they're not going to do it again and what they're going to do to make it up. As opposed to sitting in a courtroom, pleading not guilty, and letting their lawyer talk for them. So restorative justice demands active accountability. All right, that was my talking about how restorative justice actually can meet harm parties' needs in a way that the criminal legal system often fails to do. So now I'm going to tell you a story of a case that I worked. So this is a speeding case. So there was a young adult who was driving an unregistered or maybe uninsured vehicle and was noticed by law enforcement and then started speeding away to evade law enforcement. So they sped away and they sped through a construction zone with flaggers and construction crews. Nobody was injured. There were no crashes. Eventually, this young adult was caught and charged, sentenced, and convicted. And one of his probation conditions was to engage in a restorative justice process. So my job is to reach out to harm parties. So I did. I reached out to the law enforcement officer that had to chase this young man. I reached out to the flaggers on the scene who had to jump out of the way to avoid this speeding vehicle. I let them know that we were having a restorative justice process for this case. If they had any questions about where the case was, if they wanted to be involved in the restorative justice process, they could be. One of the flaggers decided to participate. I'll call him Jake. Jake didn't want to meet the driver, who I'll call Sam. Jake didn't want to meet Sam, but he did want me to meet with Sam and explain what Jake's experience was that day, and then what the consequences of Sam speeding through the construction site were for Jake, since by the time I spoke with Jake, it was about a year since the actual incident had occurred. So I told Sam, we met together in one of these, restorative justice meetings with community members, staff, and Sam, the driver, present. And this is what I told Sam. Jake was terrified that day. He was the lead flagger of the crew in charge of the whole site. He felt lucky that he saw Sam speeding towards the site, so he himself could jump a barricade and get out of the way while radioing the rest of his crew to clear the site so no one was injured. 2 weeks later, Jake quit his well-paying flagging job because it wasn't worth it to risk his life. Because he quit his job, he suffered some serious financial hardships. Several months later, after not being able to pay his car payments, his car was taken away. And then, as a result, he had to walk his very young child up and down the mountain each day to get to the bus stop. Jake hoped that Sam would really reflect on his actions and learn from his mistakes so that he would never put himself or others in danger of being hurt or killed the way that he did a year prior. If Sam could own those mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and write a detailed apology letter, that would be enough for Jake. Jake also wished Sam the best of luck and offered to be a support for Sam if he ever was having a hard time and needed someone to reach out to, because Jake himself had been involved in the criminal legal system before and had turned his life around since then. It wasn't until Sam heard Jake's story that he really understood how his actions impacted a real live human being in real live ways. Sam couldn't stop thinking about Jake's kid having to walk so far, very young child having to walk so far each day. And it was a real turning point in the restorative justice process. So, in conclusion, Sam wrote a heartfelt apology letter that Jake absolutely loved. Sam took a safe driver education class, which is one of the programs we offer at restorative justice centers, that really explores the impacts of dangerous driving. It's a class for people that have been caught doing dangerous driving, where they all come together and explore the impacts on the directly impacted people and the community of dangerous driving. And they talk about why it's important to be a safe driver and how they can be safer drivers. It's a 6-hour class, and it's quite a popular class. People get a lot out of it. Jake himself expressed real satisfaction at being able to participate in the restorative justice process as well. So I just wanted to share that story to illustrate the ways in which harmed parties can have their voice and choice, or have a voice and choice to get their needs met through a restorative justice process. Jake had a chance to tell his story and talk about the harm he experienced. He was able to be heard and witnessed. He was able to communicate with the responsible party. A lot of times people want to know things. They have questions that are burning inside them that they don't have the answers to, that keep them up at night. So our programs allow communication to happen between the harmed party and the responsible party, up through being able to meet the person. And, Jake was able to suggest some meaningful ways for Sam to take responsibility. Even though, and there were more parts of Sam's contract, Sam's repair agreement, that I didn't go into because I really wanted to focus on Jake's experience because I think it's really important. But, Jake had the opportunity to ask for other ways for Sam to make amends or take actions to avoid doing the same thing in the future. So I have a question for you all, which is, why do you think it's important to address the needs and experiences of harmed parties? It can be a rhetorical question, but if anyone wants to answer, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I'm going to bring this over to you.
I think it's very, very important because sometimes the community doesn't hear the harm of the victim. Domestic violence is very prevalent in Bethel. And in my little neighborhood, there are 4 houses that have had a form of domestic violence. And in this town, there was a case recently, and the responsible person has been taken in and loved by all the community, but the victim has not been heard. And even though they went through this justice kind of thing, the agreement did not serve the harmed person's needs and was not accepted. By the end, the restored justice said, you have to do this over. But still, the needs of the victim has not, and the community is shunning the victim and taking the responsible person as a wonderful person. And I'm not saying the responsible person isn't a wonderful person, but the community is not listening to the harmed person.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a really, really difficult situation. I'm so sorry that that's happening. And it is also really common. domestic violence and all other kinds of harm, they happen in our communities all the time. And you're right, it's important for communities to know about the harms that are happening around them. And there's a number of reasons for that. First, I think every individual deserves to have attention given to them for healing and finding their own resolution when they've experienced harm or injustice. That just seems like a basic human right to me on an individual level. And then secondly, on a community level, when people are harmed, that pain doesn't disappear. It stays. And if they don't have the tools or the support to process that pain, it continues to persist in the community. And it'll either go inward and hurt them, continue to hurt that person, and or it will be externalized to those around them, right? I'm sure a lot of you have heard the phrase, hurt people, or maybe the phrase, pain that isn't transformed is transmitted. That has real impacts on a community because when people experience harm or crime, they lose faith in others. Trust is broken. Isolation, people feel isolated, that no one cares for them, that no one supports them. And the more people that you have in a community that feel isolated, unsupported, unheard, invisible, the more a community deteriorates. And so I think that addressing the harm and pain that people experience through crime and injustice is actually essential for having a healthy and strong community and having having community responses to harm is a sort of natural consequence of that. So yeah, there's a lot of important reasons to meet the needs of harmed parties. Whew, okay, I'm gonna just check the time here. So that was dangerous driving. You wanna talk about substance use? So we're gonna switch some gears here, and I just wanna address a couple of approaches that we use in restorative justice for substance use cases. And these aren't specific to substance use cases, but they come in handy in cases involving substance use. So first of all, we really dive into complexity. And so what does that mean? So one piece is context. Context matters. Context of someone doing retail theft to support their drug habit. What is the context of that? Is it the first time they stole? Is it the 100th time that they stole? I think there's a difference. What led up to them stealing? What happened that day? What happened that week? What happened after they stole? Were they stealing for food money, or were they stealing for fun? Context matters. Also, another aspect of complexity that we look at in these situations of harm is that person's reality, their social and personal reality. What's their trauma history? Are they part of a marginalized community? Are there generational patterns of, the same behaviors generation after generation that they grew up with? Are they in a coercive relationship? So that's not to say, so looking at these factors is not to say, let's give people a pass if they've had a hard life. That's not what I'm saying at all. looking at those factors and being able to understand the fullness of someone's reality and acknowledging the pain and suffering that they're going through or that exists in their life, in the background of the theft that they did, that being seen to that level without judgment can really allow people to take responsibility and really deeply look into themselves and consider why it's important to change their behavior and how could they actually change their behavior. I don't know if I said that clearly enough, but seeing people in their full realities and all the pain and hardship that they've endured, if folks feel like they can express their whole selves and be honest with us, then maybe they can be honest with themselves around what's going on in their lives and what they actually have the power to change to avoid those same criminal behaviors in the future. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, complexity. Those are a couple of pieces of it. Last thing is, and this was something that came up in the Tamarack program, which has some treatment requirements. The idea that how can someone have the presence of mind to really look at their own behaviors and acknowledge their wrongdoing if their basic needs aren't being met today? For instance, if someone doesn't have a place to live and they're worried about where they're going to sleep that night or where their kids are going to sleep that night, how can they truly engage in an accountability process? So this is something that we consider. If someone is clearly not having their basic needs met, we as restorative justice practitioners will have conversations with them to try and assess their capacity to engage in a restorative process and an accountability process, to what degree they can really have that deep self-reflection to look at what they're doing without being distracted by getting their basic needs met each day. We would never stop someone from participating in a restorative process because they were unhoused. But we would, if they were unhoused and that was such a dire part of their existence every single day, we would try and connect them with a housing agency that could get them housing before we really started diving into an accountability process, if that makes sense. So that's a little bit of like our approaches. That's okay. That's a little bit about our approaches to addressing substance use. And then the programs, Misha's already mentioned them. We have the Youth Substance Awareness Safety Program, and this is for kids and young adults age 16 to 21 that get underage drinking, marijuana, or BUP violations. And buprenorphine is one of the drugs that is a prescription drug to address opioid addiction. So that's what that is, if you've never heard of that. And the process that folks go through, that these youth go through, is a really gentle process where there's not, it's one-on-one with a case manager, and they can really kind of think about like, what does it mean? What are the impacts of using drugs or alcohol on their bodies, their minds, their life, and their community? And it just sort of supports them in reflecting and thinking through, okay, so all my friends do this. What does that mean for me still? You know? And that's the Youth Substance Awareness Safety Program for young folks. And then I already mentioned the Tamarack program, which in addition to a restorative justice process, has a requirement of 3 months of treatment as well. in order to be successful in the program. And that can be substance use treatment or mental health treatment. And now Mish is going to tell us about a Tamarack case from their center.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about someone that we're going to call Travis because that's his name and he gave us permission to use it. And we say that because our processes are confidential. But this gentleman is really proud of the work that he has done and what he has gone through. So he's happy to share some of his experience. And I do want to say that I'm going to share some of what he has been through and some of what he has done and that led to criminal charges and what he has done since. And I do want to say that he did some things that are not okay, right? That is like a part of this that I don't just want to gloss over. So he has caused some harm, and we're going to talk about how he entered our program and took initiative to take accountability and make changes in his life. So Travis had three charges due to mental health and substance use. One was petty larceny and unlawful use of a boat. He took a boat that was docked at the marina. This is in Franklin County. He went through the liquor cabinets. He took money. He drove the boat around. He emptied one of the tanks of gas. He drove it for a while. And he stole a key to this family's jet ski. The harmed parties filed a police report, but the police didn't have Travis's location, so they put out an arrest warrant. But if they don't know where he is, there's not a lot that they can do. So then a couple months later, he got charged with unlawful trespass of an occupied residence. At this point, Travis was unhoused and in substance-induced psychosis. He believed he was being tracked by police. In winter, he stripped down to his boxers and tried to enter a residence where a woman was babysitting. He was trying to ask for help, but again, this was a really dangerous situation and very scary for this young woman. She was able to get him outside. The homeowner and father came home. Neither of them knew Travis. They called the police. The police gave him a citation for unlawful trespass, and then he was released because, as Lisa said, Law and Order is a TV show and not real life. And so people aren't always held in jail. He then missed his court appearance. A few months after this, he was staying in a motel with a partner. The partner called the police and said that Travis had broken a bathroom window in their shared hotel room. He fled, and the police were unable to locate him still. The hotel manager gave a quote for how much it cost to replace the window, but was really concerned about the safety within this motel program. A month or two later, Travis turned himself into police, knowing he needed help. So at his arraignment, the state's attorney referred his case to the Tamarack program. Through Tamarack, he was referred to a mental health clinician. He went into a rehab facility. He did have to engage in those services for 90 days before he could continue through the program. And then he was able to participate in the restorative process with volunteers. He created his repair agreement with harmed party input. And he, at this point, is just payments away from completing his process in full. So we reached out to the harmed parties. My office's Lisa, version of Lisa, our Gabby, reached out to the harmed parties. And these are multiple harmed parties or affected parties. We used some of these interchangeably with different levels of participation. So there was no involvement from one of the parties all the way to providing an impact statement, needs, and restitution. Um, so nope. Okay. The boat owners' needs were for an impact statement to be read at Travis's panel. They did not want to appear in person. They wanted restitution for the money that was taken, and they wanted an explanation. Why did you do this? Why did you think it was okay to steal someone's boat? And they wanted an explanation of who he was, because these people felt that their privacy had been deeply invaded, and they said that he knows everything about us and we know nothing about him. And so, to provide some of that safety that they had lost, these were some of the questions that they needed answered. Um, for the unlawful trespass, the harmed party chose not to participate, which is absolutely their right. There can be a lot of reasons why people don't do this, and whatever is going to feel best for them is how we want harmed parties to engage. For the motel, they initially wanted restitution for the broken window, which is reasonable, but Travis was known to the manager of the motel, and upon hearing about the amount of work that he was and had been doing, she really just wanted him to stay healthy and in recovery, and so requested that the restitution be ignored. So this is a redacted a repair agreement. So I showed you a blank one earlier. This is an actual example of one that we had. So Travis wrote a reflection letter about the impact of the event, the harm caused to all of the harmed parties. He separately created a relapse prevention plan. And then to ensure it would be less likely to occur again, and I'll show you that in a second. To ensure amends were made, he paid restitution for a total of $2,648. That's why there's a payment or two left, with the Vermont Restitution Unit, who we work with to help with these like large sums of money to be paid out. He wrote an apology letter to the owners of the boat, including answers about who he is and his response to their question, what made you think it was okay to steal a boat? He wrote hand-wrote a 5-page apology letter where he did acknowledge that he knew it was not okay to steal a boat. He also wrote an apology letter to the family relating to the unlawful trespass. So even though they chose not to engage, that was something that he wanted to do, and along with the volunteers determined that that would be a good way for him to try to make some repair. And if the harmed party decides to read that letter, we will provide it to them. But if they choose not to, that's their right. And then finally, Travis, to create a positive connection with the community, continues to volunteer at his AA meetings and does service work within his program. So this, just so you can see what an example of a repair agreement item would look like, is the relapse prevention plan that Travis provided. So he has 24 different things that he does to stay in recovery and sobriety. So this required a lot of that self-reflection that Lisa was talking about, that is required for people to complete this program, and meaningful engagement is a key part of what folks have to do here. So yeah, this is this case isn't that old. And so we don't have a harmed party response yet, but the letter was mailed out. So the question is, what if the apology letter is not accepted by the harmed party? That's a great question. So there's a couple different pieces. So I might let Lisa answer some of this just because she works with harmed parties, but I will say that I mentioned that we send guidelines around what is a meaningful apology. So we will have the responsible party send a draft to our agency, and we will take a look at it before we will send something out. We definitely would we work with the volunteers as well, who are community members, to ensure that that apology letter is genuine and answers the questions or needs that have been stated by the harmed party or parties. And so really doing our best to meet those needs. Right. So you're asking if the harmed party receives a meaningful and genuine apology letter and says that they don't accept it. Do you want to? They don't feel that it was sincere. Yeah.
So in that situation, I would have a conversation with them about what their concerns were about the letter and see if I could if they gave me permission to ask those questions and sort of find out what is missing for them and see if we could get it answered through the process. That's what I would do.
Yeah, thank you. Because I do think that there can be a mixed response, right, to anything, to any of these agreement items. So I just do want to finish with where Travis is now, and just he's 8 months sober, he's employed, and he's housed. He is about to finish his restitution payments, and a sort of a separate silver lining when we talk about the ripple effects on community. After hearing how he was doing, his daughter, who hadn't spoken to him in many years, reached out to rekindle a relationship. And so there are positive impacts beyond just what we do in this process. And the reason that this was successful is because Travis took accountability. He wanted to engage. And if somebody is unable to take accountability, or either because they feel they didn't do what they were charged with, or this process, the self-reflection is too difficult, then that's something where we would say it is not appropriate for this particular program. So when we talk about what our community can do for you, Lisa's gonna share what the restorative justice centers do.
Yeah, so we talked about restorative justice in general, and then a couple of cases involving dangerous driving and substance use and some programs. So now I just want to let you all know services, programs that you could go to your local restorative justice center and get help with. So first of all, if you experience harm or crime, and you're a harmed party, you can request a restorative justice process for your case if you want to. There's no guarantee that your case will go to restorative justice, but you can certainly advocate for it too, if that's something you want. And the way you would do that would be to contact whatever agency had that case, whether it be the state's attorney, whether it be the Department of Corrections, law enforcement, or the Department of Children and Families. You can ask. If you don't know who to contact, reach out to your local restorative justice center and we'll see what we can do to put you in touch with the right people. So that's one thing. Oh, and this slide is all around criminal legal system issues. So if you're a parent of a youth who's 22 or under, and you're worried about them being at risk of involvement in the criminal legal system, you can refer your child or whoever is in your care to the Balanced and Restorative Justice Program, which is a more intensive one-on-one program designed to support youth and hopefully keep them out of trouble. That's something that you can go to your local restorative justice center for. Pretrial services. If you're charged with something, you have a criminal charge that you're facing, and you're not offered diversion, you can go to us and ask to join our pretrial services program, which is a program that's designed to help people have better outcomes in court. You can self-refer, walking off the street. If you're a person that has been convicted of a crime and you're struggling with the logistics of life or what have you, come and get reentry services from us, and we can support you in getting your needs met. And Misha already mentioned this, but for folks that have a suspended license and want some support getting their licenses back, we have a program for that, including some back-end magic that can reduce fees for real, which is, money can be a real barrier. Like sometimes it's $1,000 is the difference between having a license and not having a license. And if people can't work and they can't get themselves to work, then that could be an insurmountable barrier to getting their license back. So those are for folks that have criminal legal system issues. Next slide, please. For the general community, if there's a conflict that you're involved in, that the law enforcement and there's no criminal legal system involvement yet, like a neighbor dispute, you can go to a restorative justice center and see about getting some mediation support to deal with that conflict in a healthy and productive way. There's no guarantee that the mediation will be successful, but it's at least a free resource that's available to you that would hopefully at least stop things from escalating so that there isn't criminal legal system involvement. We also do restorative practices education. So things like tonight, talking about what we do, but restorative justice is sort of like advanced restorative practices. There's so many things that can be done to build community and prevent conflict and harm that we would love to share our knowledge with you about. We can do this with groups of any sizes. Because we deal with conflict and harm on a regular basis, we have lots of tools and lots of experience for talking about really hard things, for developing trust amongst strangers pretty quickly. And we'd love to share those resources with our communities. One great example of this kind of work that we do is in Orange County, the town of Thetford decided that they wanted to be a restorative town. And so we've been working with them for the past 3 years to develop their own all-volunteer restorative justice council. So they can handle issues within their own community themselves. And so that program is actually just going live this fall. They're going to start taking their first cases. So it's pretty exciting. You obviously already know how to do this, but if you wanted more support, we can assist in coordinating community dialogues around controversial issues. It's an important thing. There's no way to address an issue head on without being able to have spaces for dialoguing about it, which you already know very well. So props to you. You didn't need this support from us. And then the last thing is we rely on volunteers to do our restorative justice programming. There's some volunteers from our center here. Mish was a volunteer at our center before. And that obviously serves us, but it also can serve you as having a voice in being part of justice in your community and being the voice of your own community in situations of harm and conflict. So just wanted to kind of throw all those things at you so you know other ways that you can reach out to us to get your own needs met. These are the restorative justice centers in your area. There's 2 in Windsor County. The Hartford Community Restorative Justice Center in White River Junction, and Valley Court Diversion Programs in White River Junction. They're literally like a block apart or something like that. And those are your Windsor County Restorative Justice Centers. And then our center is in Chelsea for Orange County. So that's how to reach us, and you can get our contact information on the table. Thank you very much for your kind attention and interest in this topic. We're going to open it up for questions.
Yeah, let's do it. This one's attached, right? I can't pull this out. Can I pull it out? Oh, tried. Thank you. You had a question? Can I hand this to you so that everybody can hear you?
What is the difference between those 2 in White River Junction?
That is a good question. Yeah, I am going to let you answer this one.
So Mish was talking about all the different funding sources, the funding agencies. So Hartford, if you want to put it back to the last slide. So the Hartford Community Restorative Justice Center, that has all the Department of Corrections funded programs. So all the reentry services for people that have been incarcerated or are under supervision by the Department of Corrections, all of those programs, the circles of support and accountability. They also have a mediation program, which is a separate funding source. Whereas Valley Court Diversion is the Attorney General funded programs. So Diversion, Tamarack, the drivers, driving with a suspended license, the Youth Substance Awareness Safety Program. They just have different programs because there's different funding sources. And all of our centers, the restorative justice centers, are independent nonprofits that are funded by state agencies. Very welcome.
Two things. One, it's my experience that in addition to being heard, people who have been harmed want to be believed. And there's a huge difference between those 2 things. And the second is a question. If I have been harmed because I am an observer, and it's not a legal issue, but I really feel another person's harm, and it has become me, do I have any options?
That's a great question. And thank you for that clarification too, between being heard and being believed. You're absolutely right. Mish, do you want to answer what to do if you feel you've been harmed and there's not actually a court case about it, there's not a charge around it? Do you want me to start and then you pipe in? Okay. So the mediation is something that could be done. I mean, you can certainly call a restorative justice center. And one of the things that I do in my work is trying to get people's needs met. So if there are services or anything that could help kind of deal with the reality that that person is living in, that is something that could be offered. There's a lot of gaps in how society addresses harm. And so certainly like the restorative justice centers are not able to handle all the harm that exists in our communities. There are some restorative justice centers, not mine, that have a program called Parallel Justice, which is for people that have experienced harm, but there's not an identifiable like person that did the harm. So they can still sort of like have somebody work with them and see what's possible to find a resolution, move forward, figure out a way to feel like you can leave it behind. Do you want to add any?
I just briefly want to acknowledge that we talked about how these organizations are funded by state agencies, and unfortunately, that creates limitations, right? We still are part of the criminal legal system and funded by the same people that fund a lot of those pieces of those systems, right? So unfortunately, there isn't at this moment always an answer to that question that is satisfactory to me and no doubt to you. And it is something where, again, some agencies do have access to additional funding to address some of these issues, and others do not yet. And so I would recommend contacting your local restorative justice center and seeing if that does exist for you. And if it doesn't, you can also bring that up to your local representatives. Some of these are slow moving processes and developments, which again is not an answer I like to give or to hear. But that is a little bit part of the unfortunate reality, but also some of the growth that I believe that many of our agencies are working on accomplishing in the future.
The Thetford Restorative Justice Council, that folks can like self-refer. So because it's a community-based all volunteer program, if you lived in Thetford, you could you could refer yourself to a restorative process and see what was possible. It's not clear if, because for these like community-based programs, everybody has to want to participate. So like the other person would have to want to participate. There wouldn't be a way to make them participate, but that doesn't mean you couldn't have your own restorative process to the extent that that was meaningful to you.
And if you live in Bethel, you could start to help develop perhaps a Bethel Restorative Justice Council, perhaps, hypothetically speaking.
Oh my gosh, thanks y'all so much for being here. I did just want to say that the Bethel Art Center, we are doing a community circle process on the first Sunday of the month. And there's a couple of folks who are involved with that who are trained in circle keeping. And it's like, it's not going to be as thorough and planned out as the process that these folks are describing, but it's really like, if there's something that's going on in your world and you want to talk to some people about it in a structured way, there's something going on in our community. It's something that we're trying to do regularly, almost like in a preventative way, so that when something does pop off, a great example would be what happened with the fire department last year and some of like really hurt feelings and a lot of miscommunication. Having something in place to be able to hold conversations like that, that's already happening. So Bethel Art Center, first Sunday of the month, be there. And maybe that could be the spark that becomes this like Thetford model from 3 to 5 p.m. Yep. Yeah. At the Bethel Art Center. So that's 257 Main Street in between the hair salon and the sandwich shop. And I think we're almost out of time, but yes.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. It's heartening to hear of these programs becoming more available and less government funded.
One last thing, I brought a bunch of books on restorative justice to the back table. One is on circle process. One is just it's the little book of restorative justice that Mish mentioned earlier, and the other one's the little book of race and restorative justice. And you can take one home with you by donation for $5 to $10. Other than that, I think we're all done. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
What are you going to accept?
I gotta write a letter or and send that. Back of that. You found things. Send it in.
Where? How are you?
Maybe
Thank you. I heard that did you enjoy the roots thing on the Saturday? Yeah, yeah. What's that? Like shoulder fire? Yes. Cool. I've never been to town now. Check it out. It's sweet. Yeah. This is my coffee. Claire did a bunch of work on yeah. I think it's just sort of like there's like some logistical challenges. Yes, but it's still happening. Definitely still happening. I felt a little uneasy. Jem is a new staff person, so down in the road. Oh, yeah.
That's why people leave. So emphasized. So lucky they had a person. I am, glad they haven't too. Always.
Something else.
That's all.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Carol, how are you? I do. Scared. I always get a little nervous first day of school.
My neighbor, if they had a week, I see it, I had 2 days last week.
No.
That's when I go away. So.
Yeah, the in service. I was there yesterday, just. Yeah, things ready.
What do you need?
We'll probably be more than a while.
Whether you're.
Yeah.
Person's arm or.
Because that's also.
My biggest worry is if I'm gonna wake up in the morning. That's like. I have to set an alarm. No, because I mean, I'm usually supposed to sleep later on later.
I get
Up at 8 o'clock today.
Yeah, I just that way. I just moved to the house. Yeah. The morning I look at it. It's just like to be that I. Yeah, that's fine.
But I.
Until you're gonna be.
The BLS.
Yeah.
To represent our.
But I.
Thank you for carrying. It's pretty We've gone to all, we haven't seen it. And this is the last time. Do you know what that is? Just last time. So I'll write yeah.
Hold that, it's. I should drop it.
How was time so? Yeah. Chris, and
Right. All the way here, I was saying.